Hey everybody, it's time once again for another chapter presentation. This one is going to be on Sociology Chapter 22, Health and Medicine. Do you have a quote, Maynard? Do I ever? Irving S. Cobb said, I've just learned about his illness. Let's hope it's nothing trivial. Yeah, that's burned with a touch of class. John Knowles said, one must ask whether the medical intellect functions only or even best solely on a foundation of natural science. Well, what he was getting to is this is the definition of the WHO definition of health, not the rock group, World Health Organization. In 1946, the organization defined health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. So not just physical, complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Health then is as much a social as it is a biological issue, and the health of any population is shaped by traits of the surrounding society. So for the next exam, you need to know on page 576, health and society. What are the criteria mentioned here? Number one, people judge their health relative to others according to cultural patterns, which effectively define health. In other words, standards of health vary from society to society. For example, let me give you a quote. Quentin Crisp said, health consists in having the same diseases as one's neighbors. Okay, so for example, if you lived in Beijing, which is now only the second most polluted city in the world, why? Because they use so much coal as a means of fuel. They've been trying to get away from that, but where does most of the coal mined in the United States go? We ship it right over to China, as does Australia. They ship a lot of coal to China too. So they realize their dependence on fossil fuel is creating horrific pollution of the atmosphere, which is why it's a good idea we're not burning it too much here anymore. So they found that most people in Beijing have some level of emphysema. And so if you said to somebody else and hey, how you doing, to your neighbor in Beijing, say, not too bad, how are you? So your health is relative to everybody else. So everybody's got some form of pulmonary disease, but it's all relative to each other. So yeah, we're all relatively healthy. Let's see. Here, a survey question asked of men and women. If you had to pick one, which would you choose? To be 5 years younger or to weigh 15 pounds less? Okay, what do you predict the answer is going to be between men and women? Men, 5 years younger, 63%. 15 pounds less, 29%. Women, 5 years younger, 41%. 15 pounds less, 48%. But see, that's again the focus we place in our society on what constitutes how a woman should look. Okay. People also pronounce as healthy what they hold to be morally good. The terms healthful and wholesome are used to refer to what is both medically and normally desirable. Certain behaviors are deemed sick from some people, even though those behaviors are medically acceptable. For example, when I try to impress my friends by, blowing bubbles through my nose or something, it's disgusting, but it's not. And perhaps even reprehensible, but it's not unhealthy. Anything to draw attention to Maynard, 2, cultural standards of health change over time. For example, it was for some time considered unhealthy for women to participate in strenuous exercise and sports, except in bed. Then they were allowed to be strenuous. Once again, men and their double standard. 3, health is relative to a society's technology. So we can look at the planet today from the poor health conditions in the least developed nations to the health problems presented by industrialization and more recently by the amount of stress in post-industrial societies. And four, social inequality affects people's health. One of the earlier research studies done about health was done by Carol Stack in 1975, and she said the ways in which the poor die reflect the conditions of their lives. Generally, the rich have better health care than the poor. Well, and nothing has changed. We continue to see, for example, today during the current pandemic, how it's disproportionately affecting people of color. Well, if we had a discussion, and we don't, we could discuss what is the minimum required for this state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. What even constitutes normal in terms of mental? What constitutes normal in terms of physical health? And then who has the responsibility for maintaining this minimum? You, the government, the doctor, a combination of the three? All righty. Let's see, on a worldwide basis, cancer incidence will grow by 75% by the year 2030, says WHO, against the World Health Organization. Let's see, it's estimated as living standards increase elsewhere, the number of such cancers will continue to grow, the authors said in a recent study. In countries with medium standards of living, such as South Africa, China, and India, the cancer rate will grow by 78% by 2030, the study predicted. In countries that currently have the lowest standards of living, the low-income countries, the rate will grow by 93%. The 7 most common types of cancer worldwide are lung, breast, colorectal, stomach, prostate, liver, and cervical cancer. All right. And let me throw this out for your consideration. I have been eating organic foods for the last 40 years as much as I can in my diet. Now they're much more available than they used to be, and a wider variety of foodstuffs are available organically. On the other hand, it's expensive to eat that way. I noticed, for example, that organic carrots and organic bananas are about the same as their non-organic counterpart. And what do you mean by organic? No herbicides, pesticides, fungicides used in the growing of it. So people readily admit, yes, they do have less herbicides, fungicides, pesticides. When you eat the food, they accumulate in your fatty tissue and begin to build up in your system. And we don't really know what the full impact of all that is. Anyway, recent study found that people who regularly eat organic food are much less likely to get cancer than those who don't. Scientists in France recruited nearly 70,000 volunteers, most of them women, with an average age of 44, and asked how often they ate organic fruit, vegetables, meat, dairy, and other products. Participants were tracked for an average of 4.5 years. During which time 1,340 of them developed cancer. So that's 1,340 out of 70,000 participants. Researchers found that the quarter of participants who ate the most organic foods were 25% less likely to get cancer than the quarter who ate the least, even after taking into account age, income, and other risk factors. The most frequent organic consumers had 76% fewer lymphomas, 86% fewer non-Hodgkin's lymphomas, and a 34% lower incidence of post-menopausal breast cancers. Lead author Julia Bowdry says the lower level of pesticides in organic food is the most likely explanation for the disparity. Pesticides can mimic hormones in the body and elevate cancer risk. Harvard nutritionist said that the findings are incredibly important, but he said it's possible the higher cancer rate in people who don't eat organic food could be caused by other bad health habits, such as not eating much produce. The relationship between organic food consumption and cancer risk is still unclear, he said. So there you have it, the latest research. Well, changing causes of death in the United States. You can see by, sorry there, keyboard was freaking out. Table 22-1. You will notice that many of the leading causes of death in the United States in 1900 are leading causes of death in poor societies today. Now, before the current pandemic in 1918 was the last great worldwide pandemic, a flu pandemic that killed millions worldwide and about 500,000 in the United States. Perhaps you've seen pictures of it because, yearly it was 100 years or so, just about 100 years ago, and you would see people attending events wearing masks, just like you see today. It was a particularly horrific disease too, because literally people would go to work in the morning and be perfectly fine, and by that evening they were dead. That's how fast the flu would incapacitate and kill them. Okay. The Harvard School of Public Health's predictions of the top 10 killers of the U.S. population in 2025 will be, now, this is what they are today, first of all. Heart, in this order: heart disease, 2 cancer, 3 lung disease, 4 accidents, 5 stroke, 6 Alzheimer's disease, 7 diabetes, 8 influenza or pneumonia, 9 kidney diseases, 10 suicide. By the year 2025, only 5 years from now, Harvard School of Public Health predicts the top 10 killers will be: number 1, heart disease; number 2, severe depression. An interesting commentary on our society that severe depression should kill so many people. 3, traffic accidents. 4, stroke. 5, chronic pulmonary disease. 6, respiratory infections. 7, tuberculosis. It's coming back. 8, war injuries, another sad commentary. 9, diarrheal infections, and 10, HIV/AIDS. That diarrheal infections reminds me that this was around the time of the Persian Gulf War in the 1990s, and I'm not making this up. It was in the newspapers. I heard comedians comment on it. But the United States military, always, looking to develop new, more powerful weapons, developed a handheld weapon that when fired at the opponent, the enemy, it would render that soldier, it would cause the soldier to have uncontrollable diarrhea, rendering the soldier incapable of fighting. Just by aiming at them, they'd immediately get diarrhea. Well, anyway, they were going to call it the Colin Powell. See, because he was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at that time. Colin Powell, get it? All right, I'll move on. I'm going to take up too much of your time here. Anyway, National Map 22-1 depicts life expectancy across the U.S. Notice that urbanites have better health than rural people. Also notice the connection between excellent health and income. Almost all the excellent health areas are in major metropolitan areas where income is high, and I would point out where the best research hospitals are, and probably one would receive the best medical care. People, to give you another example, people in very wealthy Fairfax County, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C., live approximately 12 years longer than people living in the downtown capital of the United States, which is only about 10 to 12 miles away. They live 12 years longer than people living in the inner city of Washington, D.C. Technology has rapidly changed the character of modern medicine. The first map of the circulatory system was made in 1628. The first heart transplant was done in 1961, and for several years thereafter, Each transplant was a major media event. Transplants are now commonplace procedures and are covered by Medicare. In fact, I see that Dr. Christian Bernard, the person who performed, a South African physician who performed the first heart transplant, just passed away. Recent studies have found that race factors in colon cancer deaths. According to the American Cancer Society, colon and rectal cancer deaths are 50% higher in blacks than in whites. Colorectal cancer is the third leading cancer killer in the US. Other recent studies have found that HIV is linked to poverty. The Center for Disease Control found that heterosexuals living below the poverty line in US cities are 5 times as likely as the nation's general population to be HIV positive, regardless of their race or ethnicity. These stats are all related to what's called social epidemiology, the study of the distribution of diseases or relative health in a society's population. Regarding obesity, check out National Map 22-2. It indicates that it's become a national epidemic. Being clinically overweight reduces longevity by 3 years, obesity by 10 years, as we just keep getting fatter. It is estimated that 14 million young children have high cholesterol, meaning over 200, because of a diet of too much junk food and too little exercise. This problem is greater in the US than in any other high-income country. And this will come as a shock. Fast foods are 7 of the 10 most advertised products in the US. Now, why is that connected? Well, do you remember there was a video produced called Super Size Me, where this guy ate nothing but McDonald's food for 1 month and just gained ridiculous amount of weight. So fast foods are heavily marketed to people living in inner city and folks, and it's cheap, so people who are on low income, the cheapest food they can buy if they're going to a restaurant is fast food. I saw a statistic the other day where there's approximately 630 million obese people in the world today, which is roughly equal to the number of people who are also starving to death. Okay, another recent study found that 80% of wealthier people assess their health as very good to excellent. Yet even wealthy US citizens are likely to have unhealthy diets and do little physical labor. All right. As I freely admit it, it would be putting it mildly to say that I experimented with drugs in the 60s, as is in vogue to say. Particularly politicians will say it that way. Ooh, I just experimented. Right. Anyway, it's kind of interesting, and some people have more of an addictive aspect to them than others. But I tried everything. I tried everything but injectables, simply because I couldn't inject myself. I guess if I had to, I would. But all I would do is chase myself around in a circle, trying to follow my body, evading the hypodermic needle. But anyway, it's amazing because of all the substances I ever tried, the only thing I ever got hooked on was phonics. Google that. Now, I think I've gone on record in here of saying, and interestingly to me, the state of Oregon, 5 states have legalized some form of marijuana, with 4 states legalizing recreational marijuana, including New Jersey, right next to Pennsylvania, which means Pennsylvania and New York will be next because they don't want to lose those tax revenues. We're talking billions of dollars in tax revenues, and so many of the states are hurting because of the pandemic, draining their treasuries. it's just a matter of time before most states, if not all states in the United States, will legalize recreational marijuana. However, Oregon went even further, legalizing, considering small amounts of heroin, cocaine, what else? I think it was meth, to be misdemeanors, and legalizing the use of, the therapeutic use of magic mushrooms. Is this a great country? Is this a great time to be alive or what? Anyway, I've gone on record as saying that all drugs should be legalized. Not because I think it's a great idea for people to use them. I just think it would eliminate the hypocrisy by saying, well, alcohol and tobacco, they're illegal, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, because they're dangerous, but cocaine is illegal because it's dangerous. So how can you legalize some things that are dangerous and not others? But I came across a drug that's available, which is 6 times more addictive than crack, and which, if unchecked, they estimate, CDC estimates it could kill 2.5 to 3 million US citizens in the next 10 years. Do you think a substance like this should be banned? I mean, even this caused me to pause. Trick question. It's tobacco. Yeah, tobacco. Perfectly legal tobacco. Now, why is tobacco not banned? Because it brings in tax revenues. So there's always this interesting, like, where do you find the balance between raising the taxes on cigarettes to raise more money and banning the use, but on the other hand, you need that tax money, because it helps fund programs. And so if you raise the taxes too high, it opens the market to illegal untaxed cigarettes, which every now and then I see a truck that's stopped on I-95 running it up from the south, filled with a truck full of cigarettes with no tax stamp on it. But on the other hand, if you ban it altogether, then you don't have the tax money coming in. So anyway, I'll give Cedar Crest a lot of props for this. Many years ago, when I was the advisor of the Student Government Association, the Student Government Association led the initiative was to ban smoking on campus. Now, and then, get the approval of the student body to do it, and then recommend that to the administration, of course, with the administration's blessings. They didn't go so far at that time to ban smoking on campus, even though I was urging them to do so. But hey, I'm just one person. And their argument was, well, smokers have rights too. And my counter argument was, yes, but the rights of non-smokers supersede the rights of smokers, because we have to inhale their smoke and it could cause ill health. To show you how, now, more recently, the administration then banned all smoking on campus. In cities where smoking has been banned in public places, there was consistently an immediate drop in heart disease rates. So it does affect the rest of us, even in a large urban environment. From the Poet's Corner, tobacco is a filthy weed that from the devil does proceed. It drains your purse and burns your clothes and makes a chimney of your nose. And what could be more romantic than kissing a person who just smoked a cigarette? It's probably like licking an ashtray. In 1987, lung cancer surpassed breast cancer as the leading cause of death among US women. Now, I think what's rather ironic about that is right around that time, a cigarette was being advertised. It was the same old cigarettes, it was just in a different package, and it was called Virginia Slims, and it was being marketed just for women. Yeah, you've come a long way, baby, like dead. What was best about the ads was it encouraged women to smoke these cigarettes because it would help women lose weight. Why? Because it kills your appetite. Well, as cigarettes have been on the decline, or tobacco use has been on the decline here in the United States, don't you worry about the tobacco companies. Some are heavily sponsoring pot. Yes. And they also are moving overseas. And so there are countries where advertising to young people to smoke cigarettes is not banned. And so don't worry, the tobacco companies just moved overseas and they'll get some folks hooked up there forever. Okay, for the next exam, you need to know on page 583, sexually transmitted diseases, STDs. Why should you know? Because I'm the caring professor, damn it. There are some 50 kinds of STDs overall. Um, 1/5 of the population, that's 20%, has an STD other than AIDS, and roughly 7,000 deaths annually in the US are related to STDs other than AIDS. So, geez, when I was young, there either weren't that many or they didn't realize how many STDs there were, but uh, there were far fewer. Pregnancy was the main thing they had to be worried about back in those days. Not me, but my partner, if in fact we were having sex. Programs to combat STDs reveal characteristic political differences. Liberals accept the fact of casual sexual activity and urge availability of birth control devices and sex education. Conservatives urge revival of an ethic of abstinence and greater marital fidelity, as was encapsulated in this quote by Monsignor John Woolsey. He said, "We don't say smoke carefully, young people. We say don't smoke." Abstinence. Although AIDS may have appeared as early as the 1960s, it wasn't until 1981 that researchers indicated that it was a real thing and what it was. Right. Now, it's old hat now, but I know when I first came across it, it wasn't widely known that the nursery rhyme "Ring Around the Rosie" was about the bubonic plague, the Black Death. It was, it was kind of interesting because in Europe, 1 out of 3 people died of the bubonic plague, and that's horrific. Now, it wasn't equally 1 out of 3 right across the spectrum. In some areas, far more, higher rate than in others. But to me, the interesting thing is, why did 2 people not die out of 3? So I suppose that's the argument some people are making today about the pandemic to get to herd immunity. The problem with getting to herd immunity, at least is my understanding of the science, is that so many people would have to die in the process to get us there. It's like, can you morally countenance that? But anyway, so I would fumble in class saying, again, always trying to think about how can we have perspective, historical perspective. I thought, so maybe years from now, 100 years from now, there'll be a nursery rhyme about the AIDS epidemic. And I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head. So I think like, didn't wear a condom, penis fell off. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything. So feeling my pain in class to not be able to come up with something, while I continued to lecture on, a student wrote the following and gave it to me after class about the AIDS epidemic, and it's to the tune of "Ring Around the Rosie." Would you like to hear it? Yeah. Okay. Ready? Didn't use a rubber, now they're 6 feet under. T cells, good countdown. Used a dirty needle, now they're sick and feeble. Junkie is underground. Blood bank didn't screen, poor babies turning green. Bad luck, their fault now. Met a stranger, took him home, now you're all on your own. Dying, tears fall down. And then she wrote, "These are all I could come up with right now, Maynard. May have some more next week." She never did, but nevertheless, here we are. She is still on the honor roll of contributions to this class. Okay. Ethical issues confronting death. In your text, they talk about euthanasia, which I hasten to point out is not a young person in India. See, youth in Asia. I'll move on. Dr. Jack Kevorkian, who was instrumental in leading the charge for euthanasia, legal euthanasia here in the United States, as is the case in Netherlands and some other countries, said, I'm trying to knock the medical profession into accepting its responsibilities. It is kind of interesting because we don't hesitate when an animal's ill. And we don't want the animal to suffer. We put the animal down, which is euthanasia, but not humans. You know, and it's always a tough decision when exactly to pull the plug when someone's ill like that and suffering. You know, if 6 months later, you know, the person is still suffering and just got even worse, like, you know, is that really a good thing? So it's a difficult decision. I understand. Anyway, you need to know for the exam on page 588, holistic medicine. Why? Because it's not only the wave of the future, it is the way it is now, or as we call it, integrated medicine. It's an approach to healthcare that emphasizes prevention of illness and takes account of the whole person takes account of the whole person within a physical and social environment. It can be used as an ally of the scientific model of medicine and is a more active approach to health than a reactive approach to wellness. So you need to know the 3 points outlined in your text. Number 1, holistic medicine treats patients as people. That practitioners seek to address not only symptoms, but also how people's environments and lifestyles affect health. 2, encourage responsibility, not dependency. Practitioners shift responsibility for health from physicians to people themselves by promoting health-promoting behavior. For example, in rural China, the physician only gets paid if all the villages are healthy. If anyone is unhealthy, the Chinese physician does not get paid. Why? Because the whole emphasis there is on wellness, not treating illness. 3, provide personal treatment. Holistic practitioners seek more personal and relaxed physical environments for practice, such as the home rather than the hospital. Well, not too many because it's too expensive. There are a few physicians today, family practice physicians, I should say, who will visit the home, but boy, is it expensive. Why? Because you've been to the physician's office. It's like a cattle chute. So they can make a lot more money by running people through that cattle chute process than the time it would take for a home visit. So they got to be compensated for that time. Yeah, and we go to a naturopath. You fill out a long survey. Why? Because they want to know all about your mental being, your mental well-being, your social well-being, because they factor this all in because they well understand, as in the WHO definition of health, that all this contributes to whatever quote, quote, ill health you're currently experiencing. Henry G. Felsen said, proper treatment will cure a cold in 7 days. Left to its own, however, a cold may hang on for about a week. See, 7 days is a week. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit more about this, shall we? Like you have a choice. Well, you do have a choice. You can always turn off the presentation. But then again, if you do, you may miss something for the exam. Not that it's mattered. Hey, that's just a joke at your expense. Don't worry about that. Okay. So Cedar Crest, a long time, this goes back to, gosh, how long ago was it now? Maybe 20 years ago? I don't know, maybe a little longer. But back at that time, Cedar Crest went into a joint venture with Good Shepherd Rehabilitation Hospital. The idea being to develop an integrated medicine program. Now, it was a great idea and it was really forward thinking, but it was way ahead of its time here in the Valley because most of the physicians at that time were not willing to accept an integrated approach, or that alternative medicine, as it's often called, had any validity to it, any scientific research to back it. Now there's plenty of research to back it, and it's, many hospitals, for example, in Canada and more here in the United States, automatically include these alternative approaches as part of mainstream medicine. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about things like acupuncture, meditation. There are many herbs have known efficacy, and so herbal approaches to assist. For example, if you drink, and I know some of you may do so, milk thistle is well understood as helping your liver cope with alcohol consumption. So all kinds of research supporting it. Or for example, we now found that if you take zinc, first sign of a cold, you take zinc for the first 2 days, it will dramatically reduce the impact of the cold. Now, they also found that if you take it beyond, I think it's 2 days, then it really doesn't have that effect at all. In fact, it actually may facilitate the progress of the cold. So just the first 2 days that you stop taking is what the research indicates. Anyhow, so as a result of those endeavors, and I might add, it was a result of that joint, well, first of all, get this. So who do you think they assigned to get this integrated medicine program going here at Cedar Crest? Was me as the point person. Like, wouldn't it have made more sense to have somebody from nursing? And it turns out like the president of the college at that time, Dr. Blaney Hall, knew I was very interested in alternative medicine and so forth. And so she thought, who better than me? I could have named at least 100 people at the college better than me. But anyway, I got the charge anyway. And one of the lead people at Good Shepherd was Dr. Micah Sadiq. And as a result of our interaction between the two institutions, he eventually came here to teach. So, hey, their loss is totally our gain. Okay, so even today, you get a minor in this. It's the bio, and social work adopts this, nursing adopts this approach. It's the bio, psycho, social, cultural, what am I missing? Psychological, spiritual approach to wellness. In other words, you got to incorporate all that into it. Okay, so let's examine it one by one. The bio approach. Now, this is kind of how most of us who don't know any better think that, biological causes have biological results in our bodies. So, for example, if I'm around somebody who has a cold and they, I don't wash my hands or whatever, I'll get the cold. It's entirely possible I'll get the cold from that contact. Well, a study was done where they took 100 brave volunteers and they asked each to use a nasal inhaler and spray into their nose the rhinovirus. Well, the rhinovirus is the predominant one of many viruses that can cause the common cold. Okay, so all 100 sprayed this into their nose. So if it was only biology, then you would think they should have all gotten a cold, but they didn't. And so the question is, why did those who did not get a cold, why did they get a cold? And so they found, after they did all the controls, as to what could account for this, they found that the reason why these people didn't is they had stronger immune systems because they had people in their life, they had loving relationships in their lives. I don't mean necessarily a sig other, but family, friends, children, and or a sig other. So people had loving relationships. Okay, I'm just giving you quick ones on each one. All right, so biological, cultural. So that's social, the social aspect. You have loving relationships in your life, feel loved, are loving. Your immune system is going to be stronger. You won't most likely get a cold. Okay, what about the cultural? Real famous study done quite some time ago was the a heart study, and it was based in Penn Argyll, PA. Now, excuse me, Rosetto. It was called it was called the Rosetto Health Study. It just came to me. Okay, so Roseto is a small town here, not too far from Allentown, and it's nestled between Bangor and Penn Argyl. So like one continuous little town. Well, what they found is that people in Roseto had much lower rates of heart disease than the people surrounding them in either of these two other towns. And so, well, why? Well, they looked at everything, the drinking water, exercise, diet, on and on and on, and they couldn't find anything really significant except for this. Now it's changed. Roseto has changed mightily since this time. But at that time, almost everyone who lived in Roseto was from Italian families. Some could even trace the villages and towns in Italy where they all came from. And so as a result of this strong cultural bond, say the word, Maynard, bond, B-O-N-D, bond, because of the strong cultural bond, they had stronger immune systems, okay? So yes, there are biological aspects of health. Yes, we have established there are social aspects to create good health. And now there's also cultural aspects. Okay, what about the psychological? Well, the psychological is go take one of Dr. Siddig's courses, like on wellness. He is a walking encyclopedia on wellness. He can cite all the research behind it. But here's the key point. The key point is how profoundly stress affects us in terms of creating ill health. Now, it's not, to give you an example, the world's leading, what would be the term? It'll occur to me in a moment. Anyway, he's a leader, all right. But anyway, he argues that 90% of all illness, he's convinced that 90% of all illness is caused simply by stress. Now, the stress, I know he's an epigeneticist. You notice how when you stop thinking about it, it comes to you. Do you know why? Because you stop telling yourself, I can't think of it. So when you stop telling yourself, I can't think of it, it enables your mind to think of it. I'm serious. That's how it works. Okay, so he's an epidemic. He's anyway, just messing with you. So he argues, epigeneticist, in other words, that genes, we talked about this before, that genes per se don't open and close, that environment causes genes to open and close. So the argument was that even if you have a genetic predisposition towards some disease, that's no guarantee you're going to get it, or even necessarily a higher probability. It all depends on your environment, your diet, exercise, stress. Okay, so here's the key. It's not that stress per se makes you sick. What stress does is stress reduces your immune system, compromises your immune system, and as a result, you can become sick because your immune system is compromised. So for example, during the current pandemic, who's at higher risk? Elderly people. Why? Because as people get older, their immune systems become depleted. Not that it has to happen that way if people take good care of themselves, but in the absence of taking the extra measure to keep one's immune system solid when one gets older, it's a natural consequence. So that's why, and then the elderly are susceptible to almost any disease to afflict them. Okay, so stress. Again, think back to when we talked about stress. Here's a key point. Nothing in and of itself causes stress. It's only what you think about that event that causes stress or not. So I gave you the example of, oh my God, I'm going to do bad on the test. Well, if that's what you think about your performance on the test, of course you're going to feel anxiety and stress. But on the other hand, you go, hey, I'll do fine on the test. And even if I don't, my life goes on, no stress. Same event. It's only what you think about it that's causing stress or not. So it's totally within your control to not be stressed. Don't think stressful thoughts. Think positively at all times. Now, here's how things work in America today. Not just us, but I don't know, we seem to be more freaked out than other countries. You know, they're a little bit more laid back in Europe and other places than we seem to be. But anyway, you know what the fight flight syndrome is, right? So it goes back to, I don't know, caveman days and were there saber-toothed tigers? I don't know. But if confronted with a saber-toothed tiger, what are you going to do? Well, you can't fight the tiger. Tiger will just tear you apart. And so you run, either fight or it's flight. Okay, so anxiety is the flight syndrome. Now, when you're in the flight syndrome, understandably so, all the energy goes away from your brain, not to think about, just run, stupid. It goes to your lungs and your heart and your muscles. It goes away from your metabolic processes. It goes away from taking care of your immune system. In that moment, all that matters is run, because all the other stuff won't matter if the tiger eats you, right? Makes sense, built into the body. Well, when we're under stress, and some of us are under stress 24/7, we are constantly in flight syndrome. As a result, our immune systems are compromised. We can't think straight. I already pointed out that when you're stressed and stressed in taking a test, you are not going to perform well, because the stress itself reduces your mental capabilities at that particular time. It compromises our digestive systems, all because many of us are so stressed out, we're so anxious that 24/7 we're in flight syndrome. Hence, our immune systems become compromised. Okay, that's the psychological. Let's go to the spiritual realm, shall we? Oh my gosh, there's so much I could talk to you about on this. For one thing, there's spontaneous remission. There are thousands of cases of spontaneous remission. Spontaneous remission means a patient has been more or less given the death sentence, and there's nothing more that it can do, the medical team can do, other than make the person comfortable. And so they found that thousands of times, once the medical procedures were withheld, the person spontaneously got healthy again. Maybe because the medical procedures were withheld, the person got healthier again. I don't know, but they do. One I came across was, and you can read about these. One that I came across was a person had cancer, and his body really was tumors all over this person's body. So sometimes when people are in these conditions, they will give approval to be tested on some new drug. Now, the thinking being, if I'm the patient, have nothing to lose because it looks like I'm going to die anyway, and I may be able to, this may help me, and at the very least, it may help science realize it does or doesn't work. So the incidents I came across was that a person who is in this condition was offered a new drug that really had a lot of promise as a cancer cure. And so the person took the drug, and amazingly, within 48 hours, all the tumors were gone. 48 hours, all the tumors were gone. So everybody was like, Hosanna, we found the cure for cancer. However, it turns out the pharmaceutical company made a mistake and sent the wrong drug. Well, ethically, they feel they had a responsibility to tell this to the patient, and they told the patient that. And once told that, within 48 hours, all the tumors returned. Do you see how powerful the mind is? But it kind of makes sense if the mind can cause illness through anxiety, when it also makes sense that the mind can heal the body. You know, wouldn't it possibly work both ways? Remember, it's mind over matter. I've often said that, and I found with my mind, it rarely matters. Again, whenever Maynard smiles, he thinks he said something funny, in case this has all been lost on you. Okay, what will be another example? Back in the days of the height of the AIDS epidemic, and in particular when most of those being afflicted were HIV, were intravenous drug users or gay people, a study was done where they took people who were gifted at long distance healing. Now, long distance healing means this person who is a gifted healer could be here in the United States, and without physically being present with a person, say Australia, could heal that person. They've actually done studies of them. They found that they send out light waves, which is how it can, anyhow, moving on. So they took 6 of these people who were gifted healers. And I want to point out that a lot of these studies done because science, particularly the medical science community, has poo-pooed these kinds of results in studies on consciousness. These are all double-blind studies. They met the highest standard, the gold standard of how to do research, so that, because a lot of times I've noticed when people disagree with the results of research, what they'll say is, well, I want to see its methodology. But when they agree with the results of the research, they don't need to see the methodology because it confirms what they already thought. Well, everybody wants to see the methodology in this stuff because it seems so spooky and it doesn't, seem to fit with the traditional understanding of scientific medicine. So this was well-conducted study. Nobody could find any methodological flaws with it. So what these 6 healers were asked to do is they had a community of AIDS victims in, I believe it was San Francisco, and they were going to focus for 1 hour their healing energies on these particular people. They had a control group of people who were at the same condition with being infected with HIV/AIDS, who were not receiving these healing energies. And so they found that during the 1 hour when the healing energies were sent, that the T cell counts of the people who were receiving the healing energies went off the charts. Whereas the control group, nothing happened to their T cell counts during that hour. So it seems to indicate something was going on there that was a positive. Okay, what else? Again, just a couple of tidbits. I came across a study one time, not a study, but an incident that took place at a Houston cardiac facility, big hospital. And they noticed that people in one ward of the heart clinic were getting healthier faster than the people were in the other ward of the heart hospital. So they finally asked the person in charge of that particular unit, why are the people in your unit with the same conditions as the people in our unit getting healthier and getting better faster? And she said, well, I pray for them. And she was immediately suspended. Why? Because it's an ethical violation to pray for people without their permission. This is why studies done on does prayer facilitate healing are very difficult to do, because if I'm told that people are praying for me, doesn't it set up the thing in my mind that, I'm going to get better, I'm going to get better. And then is it the prayer or is it my mind creating, facilitating my increased health? Anyway, by the way, studies that have been done on prayer have shown that sending healing energies in a more generic way seems to be more effective than sending healing energies that are specifically directed, like, okay, I know you have cancer of prostate, so I'm sending healing energies to your prostate. Now just send healing energies to the person seems to be more effective in those studies where they actually could conduct them and that they met scientific standards. Okay, other tidbits. One of the people we brought on to speak was a nationally known author who wrote a book called The 22 Laws of Wellness. And his story was pretty interesting. He mentioned that he was one of those people given the death sentence. He had prostate cancer, not prostate, was it prostate? No. I believe it was pancreatic cancer. Yes, a much more deadly form. He had pancreatic cancer, which most people do not live long with. And so he was given the death sentence, said, you better settle the affairs. You only have, maybe a month at best to live. Well, he decided, no, I'm not going to accept that. And he asked, can I talk to any cancer survivors in general? He said, oh, yeah, there's hundreds, thousands of them. So he began to contact them. And what he tried to find is, what did they all have in common as to how they survived cancer? And those things they all had in common became his 22 laws of wellness. Now, he even traced back to when he thought he contracted cancer, because he was having at work a really serious conflict with a person he worked with, to the point where it almost came to blows on several occasions. And within a year, that person also got cancer. And I don't remember offhand what form of cancer, but he eventually realized how key, and this is one of the keys of the 22 laws of wellness, is forgiveness. You know, when you have resentment contained in your mind like that, it begins to afflict your body, you know? And I know mystics often say how important forgiveness is. And so he wanted to go talk to this person so they could both achieve forgiveness, and they did. And the other person eventually died, but at least, you know, it helped him because they forgave each other for what really caused their illness, the conflict that resulted in their illness. But he also told the story of a woman he knew that around the same time he contracted cancer, she did too, and she had a particularly non-threatening form of breast cancer where there's a 95% survival rate. Now, she took a totally different approach when told that she had this cancer. She thought, that's it, I'm a goner. She completed her will, gave away her belongings, and within 6 months, she died of a very survivable form of cancer. Why? Because she thought about it all differently than he did. So I'm only trying to point out from the spiritual connection, there seems to be a very profound connection between the mind and stress and the ability of the mind to heal someone. Okay, moving on. Oh, let's see. You know, one of the positives of the Obamacare, also known as the Affordable Care Act, is it caused uh, millions of people who had no health insurance whatsoever to suddenly be able to have some form of affordable health insurance. Why? Because Medicaid, medical assistance, is available for low-income people in America, and Medicare is available for the elderly, but there was nothing in between. And so the understanding was, well, you know, your employer would provide that, but, you know, employers don't provide that if you don't work full-time, and the extent of your healthcare benefits is certainly going to vary from employer to employer. And even at that, most places you're going to have to pay at least 20% of your healthcare benefits. Some places you still have to pay any, but that you have to bear some of that financial burden as well. So, you know, when conservatives, Republicans began to try to strip away the key elements of the Affordable Care Act, it's problematic because one of the key elements is that it covers pre-existing illnesses. Why is that significant? Prior to that, if you try to get health insurance in your own and you had a pre-existing condition like diabetes or a heart condition, because they go around, they do a medical checkup on you, you may be denied health care insurance. And so now what are you supposed to do? So that was a key tenet of it. And it was really interesting because at the time, as conservatives fought this tooth and claw, when you asked the general public, you would break down the elements. You'd say, well, do you support the fact that there is affordable health care in America? Well, yes, I do. Do you support that health care should have include pre-existing conditions? Well, yes, I do. On and on and on. Well, these are all the key elements of Obamacare. But when you ask those same people, do you support Obamacare? Hell no. You know, once again, how uneducated we really are. But anyway, as I speak, I see that it's not confirmed yet, but it seems as though the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court, is going to continue to not abolish the Affordable Care Act. Anyway, because what the heck would these folks do now with a pandemic if suddenly they lost their health care insurance? Anyhow, so it is critical to have health care insurance. On the other hand, it has crippled some companies, particularly when they provide it for the retirees. The head of Ford Motor Company said that in building a car, the cost of providing medical care to employees is now greater than the cost of the steel in a car, which is why they're going with tin foil now. They may not be safer, but Okay, on page 593, you need to know the structural functional analysis, the theoretical analysis of health and medicine. The key sociologist here is Talcott Parsons, and he talks about the social structure of medicine. So he concluded, and pretty brilliant insight, good health is functional for society, ill health is dysfunctional because it prevents people from fully contributing to society. Again, he confirms that ill health is partly biological and partly socially defined. So you need to know for the exam, it's described in this section, the sick role and the physician's role. The sick role are patterns of behavior defined as appropriate for people who are ill. Like you have to play the sick role. The three characteristics are, number one, illness provides exemption from routine responsibilities as officialized by a medical expert. So in other words, it's okay, you're allowed to have time off, if in fact, you have a job that provides sick leave and provides healthcare benefits, as so many people in America do not have those kinds of jobs. But anyway, after all, because the thinking here is a person's illness is not deliberate. You shouldn't be punished for being ill. Okay, two, a sick person must want to be well. You can't just fake it. Well, turns out that more than 50% of people take at least one sick day per year, and 50% say at least one of those days they're not really ill. Now, here's where people are just dumb about it. So you're calling in sick, and you're nothing wrong with you, but they'll call in and say, hello, I'm calling in today. I'm sick. I'm not going to be there. And they're thinking on the other end, sure as hell didn't sound sick. You got to sell it, folks. You got to sell, because what if you say you have your sibling or your sig other calling for you? Oh yeah, well let me talk to him or her. Well, then you got to get on it. So you got to sell it, folks. You got to get on the phone like this. Go, I'm not coming in today. I don't feel well. Oh God. Listen, you got to sell it so bad, they don't want you to even be near them. And they go, okay, thanks a lot. Just go on and do what you want to do that day. Go fishing or go to the mall, whatever the hell. But you got to sell it, folks. Acting, folks. Okay. Three, an ailing person must seek competent help. You can't go to your friend, the witch doctor. You got to go to an actual physician, and get signed up. A lot of places too, a workplace will say, you can't come back if you're ill for more than 3 days without a doctor's note. We want to make sure you are not going to infect us with whatever the heck's affecting you. This leads to the physician's role, which is to cure the illness of the sick person who seeks her or his help. It's a cooperative, dependent relationship. Now, this has changed a lot because in the past, it was a very hierarchical relationship. The physician just told you what up. Now, this is partly because most people have no clue whatsoever about their bodies and how they function, don't take care of themselves, nor do they know how to, or did they know how to. So, go in, the doctor says, well, I think you got a problem with your kidneys. Kidneys? Where are they? Well, I see they're back here. How many of those do I have exactly? 3, 4? Now you have 2. How about lungs? 2. Nose? 1. Eyes? 2. Ears? 2. We have no clue. So of course we have to depend on the doctor. So here are people who are very knowledgeable about whatever it is they do in their lives, but take no time whatsoever to understanding about their bodies. Oh, anyway. Actually, in poor societies of the world, it was common to not share the diagnosis information with the patient. And partly that was because of, if I tell you this and you think about this, you're going to make yourself sicker. See, think about it. When you go to the doctor, here's how it works. You go to the doctor's office and your thinking is, and first of all, we don't go until we're really sick. So day 1, day 2, you're not feeling well, you don't go yet. You wait till day 3 when you're really ill, and then you go to the doctor. And of course, the whole point of going there is you want a prescription. You know, if I don't get a prescription, I'm not going to buy, I ain't leaving until I get a prescription. It's got to have drugs, got to get the prescription, right? And so what does the doctor always say to you? And this was an old trick that old time physicians always knew. The doctor will say to you, you know, all the way in, you're talking to you, you're saying to yourself, I'm sick, I'm sick, I'm sick. And so what does your body do? It responds accordingly. Yes, master, you're sick, and I will continue to be sick. Okay, so you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, listen, start taking this, go get this pill right away, and in 24 hours, you're going to start feeling better. And so you'll go out and say, you know what? I'm feeling better. I'm going to be feeling better. I'm going to be feeling better. And your body goes, yes, master, you are my body. I am feeling better. You see, in terms of how profound the mind. So old time doctors knew that. They would try to convince you that you're okay after all, you know, start to get you to turn around your mental approach to it. Okay, the critique, the evaluation of the structural functional theory is one limitation of the sick role concept is that it applies to acute conditions better than chronic conditions and illnesses, which may not be reversible. Two, a sick person's ability to assume the sick role depends on the patient's resources. Many working people can't afford to take off from work and adopt the sick role. Or do they even get sick leave, as I mentioned earlier? Three, illness is not entirely dysfunctional. Serious illness can enable people to positively reevaluate their lives, give them perspective, like the person I talked about from the 22 Laws of Wellness who wrote that book. Four, critics point out that Parsons' analysis gives doctors rather than patients the primary responsibility for health. This goes back to the beginning of this presentation when I said, who's responsible for your health? You, the physician, a combination of the two, the government, your health insurance company, who's responsible for your health? Just go back a moment, and something I forgot to mention to you before is that what a lot of the hospitals do now that have integrated medicine is what they found is that our allopathic approach to medicine, treat illness rather than health, or prevent illness rather, is more effective in things like, I don't know, you got a broken leg, your carotid burst, you got to do something real fast, you're bleeding to death, you know, it's like, do you have any herbal remedy for that? No, we got to take care of this immediately. And even diseases seem to have been more effectively treated through allopathic approach. But chronic illnesses seem very resistant to the allopathic approach. And that's where things like acupuncture, I should say procedures or practice like acupuncture, meditation, healthier diet, and so forth can be more effective. For example, it's been demonstrated that a healthy diet can reverse, healthy diet, exercise, a better mental state can reverse chronic health conditions. Dramatically reverse them. You know, up until the time this was discovered, it was, oh, there's not much more we can do. No, it's reversible. Let's see. A recent study found that general practitioners or family practitioners increased their time with patients from an average office visit of 18 minutes to 22 minutes. You get 4 more minutes. During this time, however, the physician's average income dropped 10.2% when adjusted for inflation. Well, yeah, the more time I spend with you, the less time I can get another person through the cattle chute. But you know how it works now. It's really interesting. In the old days, you go into the waiting room and you just rot. You know, there better be a lot of magazines. They put television on you. I didn't do it to amuse you because you're going to sit there for so long. But now you're not there very long, you know, because they have a new way of doing it. And so, you know, I'll just start thumbing through the magazine. The person, Mr. Cressman, come on in now. And I go, can I bring the magazine with me? No, but I'm not done with my art. No, put it back. And put it back where you found it. Fine. So you go in there and boom, that was pretty quick. Well, that's because they put you into, please go in here to room 4 and the doctor will be with you soon. Yeah, soon is a real relative term. You just sit there and rot. You know, there's not much more I can do. I've gone in and rearranged everything in the drawers and the cabinets and stuff. And the eerie thing I noticed is one time I was sitting in the room and next to me was a skeleton, and it turns out it was the person ahead of me still waiting to see the doctor. Yeah. The tip off is when I was sitting there and there were vultures beginning to circulate around my head. And man, I hope it gets here soon because it's not looking good. Anyway, and a lot of times the doctor has so many patients, he or she doesn't even know. Hello, Maynard, how are things at Cedar Crest College these days, eh? And now they got it all electronically down, so they don't have to go through the whole laundry list. So they go in for an annual physical. Have you suffered from any of the following? Blah, 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 blah. No, 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 no. But I always slip this one in just to see if he's paying attention. They go, however, do you have any family? Does your family, any genetic thing going on in your family? This. No, 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 no. Any family member ever said no? Father, mother, no. But I always pointed, however, diarrhea runs in my family. And it usually takes them about 45 seconds for the joke to hit them. They go, in your case, Maynard, it must be oral diarrhea. Well, don't hold them up with a question. Doctor, before you leave, can I ask you, keep it moving. Yeah. What is it? Yeah. I don't know. Okay. In regard to the nursing shortage, described in text, and as you nursing students well know, you're running the profession at a good time. Currently, the average age of U.S. nurses is 47, with 1/3 over the age of 50. Right. Not everybody has been a fan of how the medical profession operates. One of the big critics is a gentleman named Ivan Illich. He said less access to the present healthcare system would, contrary to popular rhetoric, benefit the poor. Why does he say this? He said because as many as 90,000 Americans die each year from medical errors, with misdiagnosis the most serious problem. 15% of all patients are misdiagnosed, and half will face serious complications, even death as a result. The assembly line approach to doctors' offices with the doctor clock watching creates greater risk of misdiagnosis. Studies have also found that, let's suppose the family physician misdiagnoses you, you're sent to the hospital, they may or may not reassess you. And so they just continue to carry out the misdiagnosis that was made by the family physician. Now, good doctors, good physicians in the hospital will reassess that diagnosis to make sure it's accurate. It's the same reason why you're always supposed to get a second opinion. It's medical practice, not medical perfect. Sometimes the second opinion was the correct one, or at the very least, the second opinion may confirm the fact that the first opinion was spot on. So get another opinion if it's something serious. And I'd also encourage you, there are natural cures for some things, and I'm not endorsing anything. I'm simply saying, for example, young people who have gallbladder problems, by changing one's diet and so forth, it's been proven that you can reverse gallbladder issues. But some people don't know of it. Doctors don't necessarily encourage it because it seems to them like voodoo. Wait, serious? It's just diet, exercise, doing things a little bit differently in terms, and it may be something that can't be helped with diet. But, if there's no rush, you might want to at least try it first before having your gallbladder removed. So anyway, that's the reason why so many people die. Now, we're not even getting into infections in hospitals, which is a very serious situation as well. I mean, infections are such a serious issue that maybe the last place you want to be when you're ill is the hospital. G.W. Leibniz said, a great doctor kills more people than a great general. Again, not a big fan. A recent study found that nursing staffing is tied to infections. Penn Nursing School study says reducing workload would save hospitals money. I think nurses have known for years, says one official, that staffing or burnout has been a problem. See, hospitals are not under any federal law or mandate in terms of ratios of nurse to patients. And so from the hospital's perspective, the more patients a nurse has, the more cost effective it is, as in don't have to hire more nurses. So there you are on a 12-hour shift and you're ripping up and down the hall, trying to accommodate all the patients. You don't realize that the key word here is patient. This is not a hotel. I need help here finding the TV station. We're a little busy here. You know, the best patient is the one who's most comatose. That's a patient. So word was well selected. Patient. Anyway, it's daunting working in an acute care hospital on a 12-hour shift because you're trying to make sure you don't make mistakes. You may well be covering up for a lot of the doctor's mistakes. I'm not kidding. It happens. And so it puts an enormous amount of pressure on the nurses. And a lot of nurses aren't cut out for acute care. Some love that, and love the ER and watch enough TV where they want to be in the ER, And so, yeah, if that works for you, but others find, it's difficult to establish patient relationships under those conditions. And so they'll seek other venues, like, for example, long-term care. We can have more established patient relations. So depends on what works for you. Great. And that's all we got for this particular chapter. So thus endeth chapter 22. Thanks for your attention if you're still awake. And I'll see you soon for the presentation on chapter 23. Bye for now and stay safe and healthy.